Hello everyone, we're going to be going over Chapter 8 today, Policing Issues and Challenges, California State University Dominguez Hills, Criminal Justice and the Community, 340, Section 40, Spring 2017. We are Team 1. My name is Melissa Lopez. My group members' names are Elizabeth Ramirez, Adriana Lara, Nicholas Torres, and Cassandra Aguilar. Okay, now let's get started. Our introduction for today, we will be discussing the issues and challenges related to policing. We will be covering topics such as police force, corruption, critical facts pertaining to police officials, and provide a real-world example that ties into some of these major issues in policing. Our agenda for today will include the following: facts on policing, racial bias profiling, corruption, police use of force, federal lawsuits, dangers of police work, discussion questions, a group activity, and a news-related story. Now to begin with the chapter facts, we're going to be talking about the two different classifications for police corruption. The first is called grass eaters, which involves mostly small bribes or relatively minor services offered by citizens who are seeking to avoid arrest and or prosecution. The next one is called meat eaters. This is a much more serious form of corruption involving an officer actively seeking illicit money-making opportunities. And here's another fact about the dangers of police work. The majority of officers killed in the line of duty are killed as a result of gunfire by a single subject. Continuing with the chapter facts, police use of force. Over 43.5 million people around the world come face to face with the police in a year. Of those millions, 700,000 are subject to the use of force. Female officers are also less likely to use force and more likely to use chemical weapons such as pepper spray or mace. Deadly force. In a 12-month period, an average of 600 suspects are killed by officers in America, and another 1,200 are shot and wounded. Racial profiling. Over 65% of African Americans are stopped on the road and questioned for potential shoplifting. Now let's talk about racial profiling. Racial profiling is based on a person's race, ethnicity, and or national origin. Racial profiling affects minorities the most. An average of 67% of African Americans and 63% of Hispanics are racially profiled. And in 2003, the U.S. Department of Justice banned racial profiling from all law enforcement agencies. Now we're going to be talking about bias policing. Bias policing refers to the police practices that intentionally use prejudiced judgments based on race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, economic status, religious beliefs, and or age. Now we're going to be talking about the use of police force. Research done by Jeffrey Alpert and Roger Denham concluded that the force used by an officer correlates with the resistance of a subject. Police departments are also more likely to be served with civil lawsuits that relate to the use of excessive force. To the right is a table of the 5 different levels that officers use during an encounter where they would need to use force. The first level is officer presence. The second level is verbal commands. Third, soft techniques. Fourth, hard techniques. And 5 is deadly force. These are the 5 different levels of force used by police officers in any given situation they may encounter on the daily basis. Now we're going to be talking about federal lawsuits, and I'm going to be introducing a quote that we have from our book, which states, "Law enforcement supervisor may be the object of lawsuits by the virtue of the fact that they are responsible for the actions of their officers." Now this means if an officer is acting wrongly in their job, a citizen may feel that an officer has violated the due process law, so they are able to sue the law enforcement because their rights have been violated. However, the object of the lawsuit may go back to the supervisor because the officers are under their responsibility. Now we will be talking about the dangers of police work. Research conducted in 2012 concluded the death of 119 police officers in the line of duty. This is one of the many factors that contribute to this being one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. Other dangers include risk of disease, stress, and fatigue. Suicide rate among police officers is also twice as high than the general population. Okay, now we're going to go into the following discussion questions, which begin with what is police corruption? What are the dangers of being a police officer? When is police force used? What are the different types of police force? How prevalent is police racial profiling and with what group? And what can citizens do against the excessive force used by officers? Now, here are the responses to those discussion questions we just mentioned. Police corruption is defined as the abuse of police authority for personal or organizational gain. Dangers of being a police officer include being exposed to violence, risk of disease by infected evidence, and or potential contact with patrons with a disease. And police force is used as a method by police officers to physically restrain an individual. Okay, we're going to be continuing the discussion question answers. There are numerous situations which require police to use force. On the right side is a table showing the different situations requiring police force. These are the four top encounters that require police force. First is arrest, disturbances, domestic, and then traffic stops. Arrest is the highest with 39%, disturbances 21%, traffic stops 14%, and domestic at 11% per encounter. Okay, now we're going to be going over the different types of force used. Here are three types of force. The first is excessive force, which is the application of an amount or frequency of force greater than the required to compel compliance from a willing or unwilling subject. Deadly force is defined as intended to cause death or significant bodily harm, such as gunfire. And the last is a force of less lethal weapons which are used and designed to disable a suspect without causing extreme deadly harm, such as rubber bullets, stun guns, and or pepper spray. Okay, so now if everybody could get into groups for a group activity. Each and every one of you are going to reflect on your own experiences and knowledge about the police and the use of force. How has your experience influenced your beliefs and thoughts about the police? Please share your experience with your group members to find any or no commonalities. Here are the following questions. Have you or someone you know ever encountered police force? How did you feel? Do you think a certain type of force should not be used? Why or why not? And think of an experience or recent publicized incident involving police force. Now here's our media-related story by the Los Angeles Times, which is titled San Diego Police Body Cameras Reducing Misconduct, Aggressive Use of Force, report says, written by David Garrick. Now, according to the Los Angeles Times, the San Diego Police Department has reported a reduction of excessive use of force when encountering suspects. The department suggests the reduction in force is due to the introduction of body cameras being worn by officers on duty. Prior to body cameras being implemented, overall excessive force by officers had risen by 14%. And according to David Garrick, of 520,000 incidents that the San Diego officers responded to in 2016, just over 4,600 involved the use of force, showing an extreme decrease in force used. Okay, so now we're going to be going over some examples of a body camera and the use of police force. To the bottom left, you can see what looks to be a protest and an officer using a type of force known as mace, otherwise as pepper spray. And then to the top right, you can see a police officer wearing a body camera at the center of her chest, which are now being implemented into many police departments. And now to sum up what we have learned today. Police corruption is divided into two categories, which are grass eating and meat eating. In order to avoid racial profiling, officers are provided with ethnic training. Police officers are prone to highly dangerous situations which include death, disease, and other stressful situations. Some examples of excessive force by police officers include gunfire and mace. And although illegal, racial profiling is prevalent among various police departments. The police departments and officers are also constantly being served with civil lawsuits because of the use of excessive force.